get started right away. So honestly, the main reason I wanted to play this deck was so I could have a deck that abused Sword Soul Supreme Sovereign Chengying. This is probably my favorite synchro monster of all time right now. You read its card text, and the effect is ridiculous. And for such a powerful effect, it sees so little use because it's very hard for most strategies to take advantage of a level 10 synchro like this. You've had basically the Adventure Halcdon Tenyi stuff, which is now banned, and then you have its own archetype where even in its own deck, this is like the least used of the 3 level 10 synchros in that deck by far. So I just really wanted to play a deck that can abuse the banishing effect of Chengying with all these banished outlets. And coincidentally, can you think of another monster that benefits off banished cards? So this is very quite different from the traditional blind second 8-axis rank 8 XDs builds you see on rank ladder these days. Those builds tend to run a lot of hand traps, you know, even anti-meta hand traps like Shifter. They run Fairy Tail Luna to clear the opponent's board so you can go in for a game shot with Numeron. Sometimes they run Stromberg and Sega's Light. We're not running any of that. The strategy of those decks is a lot more akin to like stunning your opponent for a turn and then game shotting them. We're not running any of those hand traps, so we're letting our opponent play to their fullest on their turn, and then on our turn we get to see if we can break their board and potentially kill them. You know, mono a mono. Sometimes we can, sometimes we can't. You know, it's Yu-Gi-Oh! You can't win them all. So first card, Eater of Millions, it banishes cards. You know, basically it's there. It's also a level 1 to make Anima with, and it's a dark to make dark with. What's especially powerful with Chengying is you summon this after you summon a Chengying. Like Chengying just wipes out a card on their field, and then either buffs Chengying by like over a K usually by itself, and then either it can clear another monster, right? Like it just, you win the game almost every time you successfully summon Eater after Chengying. And Deep Sea Diva is the second normal summon we play in this deck. I think this is one of the best level 2 tuners of all time, and with all the rank 8 and level 8 monsters that we run with the 8-axis package, Deep Sea Diva gives us another line of play to go into a varying set of monsters that aren't just rank 8 XDs. And it is really threatening when you summon this. Your opponent basically, if they have a negation, they have an interruption, they have to spend it on a normal summon Diva. Because if they don't, the first Diva is just going to go into a Baron, and then their interruption is rendered useless anyways. And then the second Diva is still going to make a Chengying out of it. It also solves the problem of typical GREN MAJU decks where, you know, GREN MAJU, it's an inconsistent strategy. It's very high variance. You need to draw a specific line of cards for it to be good. You know, if you draw all your mana outlets but you don't draw GREN MAJU, it's like you're playing a deck without a payoff. So this just gives you more chances to draw into a card that summons a monster that takes advantage of all the banished cards. And if you draw GREN MAJU but you don't draw enough banished outlets, then GREN MAJU is basically like a dead card. And Diva, on the other hand, even if you don't have banished cards, Diva, it still threatens 2 level 10 synchros by itself. And Baron plus Chengying is still incredibly difficult to deal with if you can summon that. And it's very threatening, unlike summoning of 1 weak GREN MAJU with like 8 banished cards. So yeah, 6 normal summons. So And with all the draw power, you will almost see one of these every game at least. Then we're using a KAIJU package for our first level 8 engine. Godarla obviously because Stormwinds, and we run Dogoran and 2 Gamma Seal and 1 Dogoran to vary our KAIJU names to make sure Slumber is live as much as possible. And also, I don't really like giving my opponent Gamma Seal. Like, giving them Godarla or Dogoran is a lot better since it makes Alpha more live. For example, like if you give them Godarla or a Dogoran and you go into Dingirsu, you can still summon Alpha afterwards, whereas if you give them Gamma Seal, you can't. And Dogoran and Godarla can be killed by Pain Gainer, whereas Gamma Seal has too much defense. So, yeah. Dangers, triple Bigfoot, triple Thunderbird, and these are staple level 8s you see in 8-axis builds, but because we're running trade-in, we'll get to that later. These get a lot better in our build than the traditional 8-axis build that only runs Seconds Light. Gizmek, you know, on top of all the stuff it does for GREN MAJU strategies and rank 8 base strategies, with the addition of Chengying, now you can use Gizmek like the traditional old school Orcus builds played Bomber Dragon and Zero Boros, as now you can use Gizmek as an interruption on your opponent's turn with a Chengying on board, which is, you know, something 8-axis builds and GREN MAJU builds did not have. A very good interruption on the opponent's turn if you fail to kill them. Alpha is Alpha, the best level 8 monster. Duster, because there's so much floodgates and stun and flu. Mind Control is one of the more interesting cards in the deck. As soon as we got the Zombie Vampire, I threw 3 of these in because you can, as long as your opponent's monster you take has a level, you can treat it as a level 8 and then rank into overlay into Zombie Vampire. And then in this meta, there's just a lot of raw level 8 monsters already. You know, just like against Sword Soul, they have their Chi Shao. Against Branded, yeah, this deck, Branded is an amazing matchup for this deck. Like, you pretty much only lose to Branded if they max you and draw multiple hand traps off the maxi. You know, like how every other deck loses in Master Duel. If you target a Mirror Jade, if Mirror Jade is the only monster, they have to banish a Mirror Jade. They can't let you have it. And it baits out a brand in red, and they can't go Guiding Chimera because you have no cards on the field. Or you bait out their brand in red already with another removal card, and then they have a Cordis on field. You just take their hand. How do you pronounce that card? Yeah, Despian Caritis. Normally would be a problem, a difficult card to OTK through. You just take it for yourself, and you use it for your own rank 8 plays. So trade-in is insane. Half the time when you activate trade-in, it's honestly better than Desires, because if you pair it with one of these 9 monsters here, trade-in with Gizmek, literally Pot of Greed, and trade-in with a danger monster is targeted removal. Bigfoot, if you discard Bigfoot, you can snipe any of the problematic blue cards, you know, like Barrier Statue, N-Pen, or Map. You always know where the brand in red is set, so you can snipe their brand in red by discarding Thunderbird, or if their only monster is Mirror Jade, you could discard Bigfoot and force out the brand in red since red. Slumber is the board wipe of choice. It does everything you want with a board wipe. Plus, it gives you a body on the field, a level 8 body that you can do stuff with. You can give your opponent a bigger kaiju as well, so that you can also set up alpha, and then you can place the kaiju under the extra monster zone and seal it with anima as well. You can even mind control it later if you have another thing to overlay or sync off the initial kaiju with. The only issue with this card, two main issues. One is, unfortunately, we cannot we cannot slumber while the wind barrier statue is on the field. So that really freaking sucks. So that's probably the biggest flaw with this card. The other problem is this gets hit by Ash. Although we do have quite 4 different cards that serve as Ash bait. So if you have two of any of these cards, you could potentially bait out Ash with a less important activation, and then slam the more important card later, such as if their field's not too threatening, you can bait out an Ash of Slumber and then Desires after. Speaking of Desires,
I don't need to worry about Ash. I still have 10 banished cards.
Lightning Storm. I don't like this card. I don't like putting this in this deck. I already have Harpies in here, and this is just like anti-gas. When you draw cards, when you like activate draw cards or activate danger, you want to draw into more live bodies and more gas so you can put on the field. Drawing the Lightning Storm is like, one, it's not always useful against every matchup. This is pretty much just a concession that Flu exists in the meta. So drawing this against non-Flu matchups, it's already kind of iffy. And then you draw this off a danger, it's even worse. It has come out handy against Flu, so it is worth the slot. I just don't like how it weakens the deck against every other matchup. But that's nature of best of one ladder, you know. The extra deck Baron is Baron. Chengying. I explained all the cool applications with Chengying already. This card is like House. So, Numeron Dragon. This deck uses Numeron Dragon very frequently and very differently from the Luna Kaiju variant. The Luna Kaiju 8-axis build is trying to clear your opponent's board with stuff like Luna and Alpha, and then hit directly with 9k Numeron Dragon hit for game. This deck, obviously we don't play Luna, so, and we're playing Slumber, which gives our opponent a monster, so it's very rare that you'll Numeron Dragon into a clear board instead. Most of the time, you'll be making Draglubion as your second rank 8 Xyz after you usually have a Ding or a Zombie Vampire on the field first. And then, because you have Draglubion, another rank 8, and then Numeron Dragon on the field, you have 17 ranks worth of Xyz on the field, so Numeron Dragon goes all the way to 17k. Which is pretty much game against every single monster in the game. Funnily enough, even including you can attack for game with your Numeron Dragon over an opposing 9k Numeron Dragon. Which is really... I mean, your opponent just feels like the most sick when you do that to them. Number 38, Hope Harbinger. This 99.999% of the time, this is just what you put under Numeron Dragon. So honestly, you do not need the ultra rare material. You can use Hard Earth Dragon instead, the NR staple. The reason I made the change recently was because of a concession to Protoss, since this is my only rank 8 Xyz that isn't dark. So if I get dark locked, I can still make this and then threaten Zeus afterwards. Although that's literally never happened, and as you can see in the replays, it's usually not even necessary. So yeah, this is just here to look shiny. Ding is ding. It removes the card. It just non-targeting removes the card, so it always baits out interaction. And it usually stays on the field because it protects itself, which is important to know because with Ding and number 77, because they can protect themselves, yeah, this on the field would be destroyed by battle card, but you can detach. You could do stuff like slumber your own board, and then you would still keep Ding or 7 Sins, and then you would get an additional Kaiju on the field. And that's just a way to keep extra damage on board while clearing the field. Zombie Vampire makes mind control a hell of a lot better, and this is the main way you get to Numeron OTK your opponent, since Zombie Vampire can mill cards and then summon a level 8 that you milled. So usually when you have access to 3 level 8 bodies, you could make, including mind control counts as a level 8 body, you can put 2 level 8 bodies into the Zombie Vampire, and you'll usually mill a level 8, which will give you enough material to make Zombie Vampire plus Draglubion for the aforementioned 17k Numeron Dragon. Pain Gainer is just something you overlay on top of usually a Ding. Although you can, theoretically, you can take your opponent's monster, overlay it for Zombie Vampire, and just not use Zombie Vampire and just overlay a Pain Gainer on top of it, since you need a Dark Xyz, a level 8 Dark Xyz with 2 or more Xyz materials. And when you make this by itself, it'll have 2200 defense, and it kills every monster on the field with less defense than it has. So most notably, it kills Enpen. It also, when you give your opponent Godarla or Dogoran, it also kills Dogoran, those 2 Kaijus, if you want to clear the field. And the 7 Sins, like the effect literally never comes in. You only use this as like one as a 4k beat stick, and 2 as a way into a 4 materials use, even after you use Pain Gainer's effect to clear your board. Zeus. Yes. Anima is, a lot of the times with Eater of Millions, you don't even really attack with Eater. You use it to banish cards to make your MAJUs and trigger your MAJUs and Chengyings bigger, and to trigger Chengying. Most of the time you're actually, since you play a lot of Kaijus and Slumber, you would summon Eater and then turn it into an Anima and then steal the Kaiju you gave them. And that's usually that, obviously after Slumber, that's the only monster you have in the field, but it just gives you a free 27 to 3k attack monster while clearing the board, so that's usually enough to push for game that way. Dark is usually you make this with Eater as well, because you know Eater is not a level 8, so you can't turn into any of the cool Xyz. But you can Dark take your opponent's stuff and then take the thing you revived from your opponent and turn that into a Zombie Vampire, and then extend from there. Unfortunately, you know, we don't run any search targets for Dark. Eater does not count, but usually if you summon this, you're not trying to crash it, you're trying to end the game. There's 3 flex slots for you rarely go into Unicorn, Access Code, or the second Chengying. I think I've used each of these like maybe once my entire climb to Diamond. So Chengying, theoretically, and when you can make 2 level 10 synchros, if you have enough banished cards, you could make double Chengying, and then for the effect that decreases your opponent's monster's attack by 100, it stacks per copy of Chengying. So if you have like 10 banished cards, all your opponents lose 2k attack. If you have, it's like 18 banished cards, all your opponents monsters lose 3600 attack. It's, in theory it sounds nice. In practice, you know, usually Baron plus Chengying is already enough. Because like, if you have that many managed cards, that means you have access to an Eater, a Kaiju, or a Desires already resolved, and then you usually have more monsters and more gas available, so you don't need to rely on double chaining. So yeah, you could cut this for something. Same with Access Code and Unicorn. You only ever get one pop with Access Code anyway, so it's not even that good, and you're usually devoting 2 monsters into this. It's cool if you can like DIVA and Eaters into this, since Eater can't really make anything cool, but you're still wasting a DIVA, so it's still usually still going to one of these. So the stuff you can put in its place are this level 2 Zeus package, which honestly I never missed. I had these in initially and I just cut them because I never went into it. Hiatic Sun Dragon Overlord Heliopolis. It's an out the skill drain, which is neat. Explorer, because new ship. I don't think I went into this once when I had this in the extra. Lancelot. It sounds good in theory, since it's like a Doom Cowl for all card effects, and it's a melee seek. Attack directly, send a monster to the grave, but most of the time you want to try to be OTKing your opponent, and making this, it's really hard to OTK while still making this, because it's a mandatory effect and you can't really extend further after you make this. And most of the time, like, you can make Zeus easily enough with Ding, since Ding has battle protection anyways. And then and all your rank 8 exceeds already have high attacks, so there's usually at least one thing they can attack over, so making the Zeus is never a problem. Galaxy number 90 is it's a very expensive Veiler. I think the most probably the most applicable thing you can put in is Galaxy Eyes, the Photon package, Galaxy Eyes Photon, and then a Cipher Blade. This is a monster. It's just a pop. Now you can't make Zeus with this, so there's that. But a second form of pop, a second pop on your turn in addition to Ding, because you can only summon Ding once a turn. It's probably the, if I bothered buying the Galaxy structure deck, I'd probably be playing that over the second Chengying and Access Code, honestly. So yeah, and I cut Reboot because Reboot is just really just bad against Despia. At least Lightning Storm you can hit their brand in red, but with Despia being so popular, red Reboot is just, it also doesn't, it only hits 1 out of like the 3 problem cards against the typical flu board. So yeah, even though it's really nice against all the Floodgate decks, Flu and Despia are more common. Well, because I know people are going to ask me about Pank in a Go Second deck. So obviously the main problem is Pank, it's not a level 8, so no rank 8 exceeds, no level 10 synchros for this. We're not even running Ash, so our hand traps can't even make Baron with this. And the second thing is, I'm not convinced how good even Pank is this meta, since we look at all the most common monsters being played. You have Barrier Statue, Enpin, Mirror Jade, Qishao, Baron, the Qixing Longyun. Like, Pank can't even run, either can't be summoned or just can't even run over those. So even if you did want to give up your battle phase in an OTK deck to get value out of Pank, you can't even do that. You just have to sack it off and use it like a Regeki break. So yeah, click. There's gonna be a couple videos up. If you want to watch this deck in action, see the replays, just click on one of these right here. Thanks for watching.